Greetings viewers and welcome to the Sage 200 Did You Know That webinar. Today's webinar will cover the following. The importance of understanding that there are many features within Sage Evolution that can make your processing much more streamlined and convenient. These include charts, the ability to rename master files, various warehouse utilities, the global item change feature, message log viewer, the ability to customize the system tree, the search feature, setting up user preferences, visual reports, the database audit setup, the backup and restore process, creating internet links, filter features, confirm the maximum feature, and the filtering of columns. Right, let's get started. Now, within Sage 200, there are various features that are within each model that's going to make your processing much more streamlined and convenient. And first of all, we have the ability to look at some charts. On the top of the screen, there's a charts option. And these charts are applicable to the general ledger, contact management, and order entry modules. Under general ledger, we can look at account movement options. And it's simply a case of specifying the particular financial year, the general ledger account that you want to have a look at, and we can then go view. So it's going to give you a breakdown per month of the general ledger account you've specified and the movement. And as you can see, we've got it for year 2 there, and obviously just details of the costs related to that general ledger account for the period. I can also use something, for example, as a balance. So I can either use movement or balance, and I've then got the details about the balance for that account for that period. Now, I can also just take it a step further, and if need be, I can animate the chart, which is really great if you, for example, during a presentation, you want to obviously show exactly what the balances are, the movement on the account, and use animations if required. And that's obviously just available for all GL accounts. So once again, I can just select my account, specify to view the account movement as well as the balance. Now, under the contact management option, we've got a whole lot of options that relate to incidents. So for example, we can see the number of incidents that were closed, the incident statuses, the number of incidents closed on a specific day or by day, the number of open incidents, and the time an incident has been opened. So specifically in your CRM environment, you may want to keep tracks on, for example, how many customers were assisted, how many incidents were logged, how many were closed, etc. For example, the time opened. You may want to, for example, have an escalation that incidents must be resolved or closed within a certain time frame. And you can obviously just check how long those incidents have been opened, then follow up on those details as necessary. So for example, if I go by open incidents, I can check my details there. It's going to give me details about not started, in progress, etc. And also I can obviously see by agent name, by incident type, incident category, etc. So I can see all this information on one centralized dashboard. We also have the ability under content management to view details about Salesforce automation, which is really great if you're chasing up, for example, opportunities that you want to convert into leads and sales. Obviously, check what the stages those opportunities are in and see which opportunities are still open and are being worked at in order to convert those into actual sales. Then on the order entry side, we've got the ability to view sales versus purchases graphic, and that's just going to give us details of our sales compared to our purchases. So as you can see, a really ideal way that you can look at information in those 3 modules within one desktop or one dashboard setting. Right. Now, next we have the ability to go rename master files. This includes supplier, customer accounts, as well as inventory items. So maybe situation whereby you need to rename an inventory item code, simply because maybe that you're using the same item code as your supplier, and that code is perhaps been changed, and you've then got the ability to go and rename an inventory item code or a supplier or customer account. So within the module, for example, under my inventory, I go to maintenance, and we've got the rename option there. Let's just go find the rename option, rename item code. There we go. And it's a case of inserting the actual simple code, which is the item, which is the original name of the item. And I can then go simply specify exactly what the new code is going to be. And there we go. So I'm saying okay to that. Just the confirmation message that I do in fact want to rename that code and what it's going to be renamed to, and I can continue. Now, I think the important thing to stress here is that the renaming of item codes or supplier custom accounts will have no impact on the historical transactions. Those are still going to be there with relevant information. It's obviously just going to be that the new transactions are going to be linked to the new item code, and the history is going to stay intact. Very important to understand that. So I've renamed my inventory item code. I can simply go, for example, under customers, and I can also use the rename option there. Rename account, and simply a case of specifying what is the existing account and what I'm going to be renaming it to. Right, there we go, and we're good to go. As I say, those details, the historical information remains intact. However, we are going to have the new information linking to the item code or inventory item code or account number. Right, now, we know that Sage Evolution has got a really unique warehousing feature, multi-warehousing feature, which allows you to classify your items in certain locations. Those warehouses could be physical locations, they could be branches, they could be certain areas within a huge warehouse. So just using the multi-warehousing, you would obviously use it based on your relevant inventory requirements. Now, there are a couple of options that we can look at with regards to warehouse utilities. And if I go to inventory, and under maintenance, I'm going to have a warehouse utilities feature. Now, the majority of items here are just a case of adding or removing inventory items from a specified warehouse. So I've got the option to add all inventory items or remove all inventory items, or I can add or remove a range of specific items from a specific warehouse. So it could be a case, for example, your warehouse may be a branch, the branch is closing down, etc., or not stocking the item, and I can then go remove that item from the warehouse. What's important to understand here is that, as mentioned on the screen, is that warehouse items cannot be added or removed from the master warehouse if you are using multi-warehousing. And very importantly is that when removing items, ensure that each warehouse item has 0 on hand. So obviously, if you are going to be doing a range of items or all items, just ensure the quantities are set to 0. Obviously, that stock would need to move to a certain location. So you could do something, for example, maybe a warehouse transfer, where you transfer the existing quantities of those items to other locations. And once the quantity is on 0, you can then add or remove them from that warehouse, etc. So if you're saying, for example, a range of items, specify your range there and any other relevant details, and specify the warehouse from where it's going to be removed from, and you're good to go. So I can say, for example, there's my range of items from that particular warehouse, and we're good to go. Start the process. It's obviously very important that you've made a backup of your data before commencing with this process, and also ensure that all users have exited the application once this has been completed. Right, so we're good to go. We specified a range of items, and we're good to go. Now what you'll notice is that the screen came up, which is really displaying the message log viewer, which we'll deal with later, which is also a very unique feature within the application. Right, if you just revert back to warehouse utilities, we've been able to know that we can add or remove inventory items from a warehouse. We also have the ability to convert items from non-warehouse items to warehouse items. So it's very possible that initially you weren't making use of the multi-warehousing module, and you're now going to convert those items or these items to be multi-warehousing once you're beginning to use the module. So it's simply a case of saying, select your range of items or all your items, and then add into specific warehouses, and you can continue from there and run the setup. This also could be used, for example, if you open up a new branch, and that's going to be act as a warehouse for you. You could then add all those items or a range of items that's going to be sold or transacted with at that branch to be warehouse items for that warehouse. Right, and obviously very importantly, items will be added to the master warehouse even if it's not selected above, and also only non-warehouse items will be converted, certainly. So as you can see, run that process and you're good to go. And then specify the warehouse. Okay, we run those options there and we can continue with that process. So as you can see, a case of add or removing items from a warehouse, and the other option would be is to convert non-warehouse items to be warehouse items. We then also have the global item change, which is a very useful feature. And as the name implies, it's a setting or process that relates to multiple items within the database. And what we can do here is a couple of options. For example, changing the costing method. So for example, if you want to change from one costing method to the other, simply specify your range of items for all or multiple warehouses or specific warehouses, and then specify which costing method you want to update it to. And then just specify the transaction code for the adjustments, as there could be adjustments taking place within a GL based on the new costs that are being updated, etc. Now, just one thing to remember is that within Sage Evolution, you are able to have a setting whereby you can implement cost per warehouse or cost per item. So cost per item simply means is that the cost of the item is going to be uniform irrespective of which warehouse it is. Cost per warehouse then signifies that the item will have a different cost depending on which warehouse it's situated in. So obviously, if you are using cost per warehouse, you need to specify in which particular warehouses is this cost going to be updated to, etc. So very important just to get those details and understand that the differences between cost per item versus cost per warehouse. And then you're good to go. Now, we can also implement details about changing the text types. So we know that if each item has got a specific text types for depending on the transaction being processed. GRVs, return to suppliers, credit notes, and invoicing. And you can also just update those on the inventory items on a global scale. Under prices, we've got the ability to go update the prices based on the global item change. And this can be applicable to all price lists or specific price lists. And you can use either update the markup rate, the inclusive price, or the exclusive price, and specify markup rate percentage if you need to. And then we've got the ability under manage prices. Now, this really is a way that you can diagnose any sort of irregularities within the database regarding prices. And the process would be firstly to go to diagnose, where it'll check for things like duplicate prices, non-sellable warehouse pricing, pricing in the goods in transit warehouse, as well as markup with prices, etc. So once you've checked that you've done diagnosis, see where there are irregularities, you can certainly run the cleanup and specify exactly what it is that you want to update. These include things like removing prices from non-sellable warehouses, removing prices from the GIT warehouse, and updating inclusive and exclusive prices on prices set to markup. So a couple of options there just to check the integrity of the pricing based on certain criteria, and you can then run that and ensure that the integrity of the database regarding prices has been maintained and resolved. So 4 options there that you can go look at. And remember is that this is a global item change, so you can specify on a range of items or as all items within your database. Now, coming up next, we have something which is really vital within the database in the Sage 200 application. It's a message log viewer. Now, as the name implies, it's just a log that recalls or records all transactions or changes made to various records, certain transactions processed, etc. within the database, and you could use those for reference purposes. So that's found under administration. We then have system tools and message log viewer. So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen there, there's a whole range of options where logs are kept, and just based on what's carried or the process being carried out, you then obviously can just check what was changed and check the details, the time and date it was changed, and by which user. So, for example, we may have gone to go rename a supplier account. It gives me details about the accounts payable rename and tells me details about when this occurred. I've got my details there with the date timestamp, as well as when was the information processed, okay, by which agent, and exactly what was changed. So it tells me that this account was renamed from that to that, and we've obviously got a record of exactly what was updated and changed, when and by which agent. We've got things like the application, which would pick up things like, for example, maybe error messages, things like deadlock errors, access violation problems. You can obviously pick them up here. They would be logged, giving you a date and time of when this error occurred, and also which agent was processing the transaction or running the report, etc., when this error came up. So very good if you're maybe looking for things like maybe troubleshooting certain on your database. Always check the log viewer to check sure that the records have been stored there of any irregularities, etc., and changes made. Under company, things like saving defaults, things like copy companies being made, etc., and obviously information about the defaults being saved, changes made, etc. Okay. Inventory global changes. So if we expand that, once again, if you've updated the costing method via the warehouse utility or the global item change, any changes there, it's going to give you those details to the date time stamp together with the agent that completed that process. And the inventory item changes, got things like we ran the item change start, etc. And if we then went to go and rename the item codes. So in this particular instance, changes were made, tells you exactly what item was changed, etc., and those details there. Things like the warehouse utilities, okay, this tells you if items removed from a specific warehouse or were non-inventory or non-warehouse items converted to warehouse items, etc. And I've got my breakdown there of that particular transaction or that process. Right, so I can also just obviously go and save this to file, create a log file. And what you'll notice is that things like, for example, like general ledger relinks, customer relinks, etc., that information does get logged in the log viewer. And I can obviously see if there were errors, etc., and look into those and see why there were errors on those relink processes, etc. So as you can see, a really useful tool that you can make use of, and certainly is very useful when troubleshooting or looking at database settings and changes made to the record within the database. Right. And obviously, being under your system tools, obviously only accessible by the administrator user. Now, we all know that Evolution has a very complex and unique way of setting up access permissions for users, which really ensures that security is paramount and that users are only able to process certain transactions or process certain tasks within the database. Now, really, the setting up of access permissions is really a two-tiered approach. So the first thing would obviously be to understand is that the new agent within the application, what functions or processes will that agent be carrying out? And based on that, go customize the system tree. Now, the system tree, as you can see, is just details of all the applications available, inquiries, reports, maintenance, etc. And I, as administrator, once I know exactly the role of that agent, can simply go and customize that user system tree so that the agent will only be able to access and see the relevant nodes and dialogues that are applicable to their roles and responsibilities. And then once I've done that, I can then go and allocate access permissions based specifically on those roles and duties. So to explain this, I'm going to go to Administration and Agents, and I'm going to go Add Agent. Let's go add the agent name there. Right, and I'm just going to remove that. Right, so firstly, as I'm going to determine exactly what the role is of this agent within the application. And once I've got those details, it's a case of going to the system tree, and it's going to default to the default, display the default system tree there. And so, for example, I can just go and I can just go and remove the relevant modules which aren't going to be applicable to the agent. So I can simply go highlight the module, and I can just click on the delete option, delete those options, and so that the user system should only consist of certain modes, nodes, or dialogues. What I can then do is I can go a step further, and within the actual module, I can then go to a sub-menu and say, for example, these particular options aren't applicable. So, for example, the user cannot process a credit note. They can only do, for example, invoicing, etc. And then be a lot more sort of specific on what functions are going to be applicable for that user or not. Right, so I'm just going to make this a bit more streamlined for the user. Right, so there we go. And I'm just going to clear that. And okay. Right, so I'm just going to go log in as that user. And we'll see exactly what that system tree now looks like for that user that I've just created. Right, so there we go. I've got my desktop. However, I'm only displaying, for example, the relevant modules and nodes for that user. In this case, my desktop, tax, general ledger, and customers and sales. So that user will only be able to see those details when they log in. Now, the second phase would simply be to log in as administrator. So you've customized the system tree and now log in as administrator, and then based on those system tree settings, go and allocate the access permissions. So log in as administrator. And I'm going to go to that user, edit, and now it's simply a case of going to the access permissions, and we know that the user is going to be using this module, and based on that options, we can simply go and allocate the access permissions there based on the system tree settings. So as you can see, a two-phase process, determine what the roles and responsibilities are going to be for the user, and then customize the system tree. Once that's done, then go and allocate access permissions based on the system tree settings. Right. Now, on version 9.20, we've implemented, or version 9, we've implemented a very unique filter and search option. Now, if you look in the top left-hand corner of the screen, there's a filter box there, and it really is very useful based on the fact that from one specific location, I can quickly and easily reach various areas within the program. So I simply say, for example, valuation. I'm currently now in the access agent administration option, and I just want to go, for example, view an aging. So type in age analysis, and there we go. Select the option. As you can see, the results appear on the left-hand side there, and I simply go specify the most applicable one and run the report. Just take, for example, valuation. Right, and I can run my report from there. I may want to, for example, process invoice. Right, and there we go. So it's one central location, regardless of where I am in the application. I simply go type in a range of keywords, and I can access that location. Previously, you'd need to, for example, open up the inventory module, go to reports, then go to valuation. Whereas here, it's simply a case of saying, right, I want to view valuation report, type in the filter, and you're there. Quick, easy, and streamlined. Now, although the administrator has control over setting up the user system tree, and once that's done, allocating them the access permissions for their roles and responsibilities, the user does have the ability to modify or amend the actual user interface within the application. And that gets done under the user preferences. So if I go, for example, to view, I have user preferences there. And based on this particular feature, I can now go make a couple of changes to the interface who I as a specific user want to see. So I can, for example, change the button theme, colored versus transparent. I can specify large or small button sizes, change the scrolling direction, and also I can determine exactly what I want to show. For example, show the reports, show recently used, process flows, system tree, etc. So I'm now going to go and specify my specific requirements or my preferences when working with an application. And yes, I think I'm good to go there. That's what I want to see. And there we go. So now if I go to my system tree, those dialogues and nodes are just going to display as I set them up under my user preferences. So the user does have the ability to go specify those details and really go customize how they want the user face their interface to appear when working in the system. Right, then just as we had the charts, we've also got the ability to view visual reports. Now, visual reports relate to general ledger as well as inventory. And if you go to general ledger, we've then got reports, and we do have the visual reports option there. Right, so the visual reports here relate to the trial balance, the balance sheet, and the income statement. So the income statement is going to be the income expense analysis, the trial balance being the business performance analysis, and the balance sheet being the financial position analysis. So, for example, if I want to go view a trial balance as a visual report, go to business performance analysis, and I can just specify my filter criteria there and with relevant details, and I can just go view that. Now, the great thing here is that I can specify, or I can view these details in a diagram, in a form of a diagram, and I simply go and specify the type of diagram. So there we go. And I can specify the relevant details. Right, so let's just go view the options. That's my information. And I'm just going to say show all. And let's go back one. Cancel that. Right, so I specified all my details there. Specify my date range and view that. Right, so there we go. Everything seems to be in order and we're good to go, no problem there. So as you can see, I can run the relevant reports based on my necessary information with the addition of a pie chart or a diagram if needed. If we then go, for example, to the income statement, some details, I specify my information there, view, and I've got a breakdown there together with information. So great way just to check things on the fly in the form of a dashboard, either use the charts option or the visual reports, and I can see exactly the status of my financials from a dashboard point of view. The balance sheet, let's go view that one. And I've got the details there. Right, so I've got details for trial balance, income statement, balance sheet, and view the reports from the visual reports option. Now, we know how important it is to ensure that you've allocated the relevant access permissions and security options to agents within the program. We also have the ability to set up something called a database audit setup. Now, this really means is that you're going to specify a specific SQL table and monitor the movement and records being added, etc., to that specific table. And that's done under database audit setup, which can be found under administration, system configuration, audit setup. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got a list of all the possible SQL tables within the Evolution database. And I would need to now go specify which particular table would I want to audit. So, for example, you can audit one table or multiple tables, and obviously just see the records being added and the log of information on that specific table. So, for example, I could maybe take customers. I want to, for example, see when a customer was added, edited, etc. So I'm going to go to the client table, and I would need to then enable the particular audit setup on that table. So I go to enable, and that's been enabled. So I'm just going to, as you can see here, I can specify details from a certain date range, and I can refresh the data on the fly. So by using that refresh option. So we're going to go do a quick example of how that works, and I'm just going to close this for the time being, and our audit is going to be in the client table. So we, for example, want to monitor when new clients are added onto the database. So I'm just going to go and under maintenance, I'm going to go to my customers. And I'm now going to add another customer. Right, so I'm just going to add those details there for the time being. And if I now go to my audit setup, client, and it's going to give me details of the actual customer who was added. So there's my date timestamp and the relevant information and the customer details there. Right. So what you notice is that there's an important field called underscore audit type. So currently now it's set to I, which means inserting of a record, and we're good to go. So the record has been inserted into the database table. And what I'm going to be doing now is I'm just going to go to the customer and go make an amendment there. And let's just say, for example, I'm just going to change the credit limit there, and right, so I've made some changes to the account and just go back to the audit setup. Right, so now you see that there's two records. We have changes have been made, and they're my details. And what you notice there is that the audit type is now a U, which means that an updating has occurred. So I is for inserting a record, and U means is that updating changes were made to an existing record. So a very useful process or feature if you want to monitor information specific to tables, things like the adding of master files, new sales, etc. Certainly use database audit setup, and you can monitor those changes. Okay, it's possible that you may want to, for example, maybe disable auditing for a specific reason. So it's simply a case of highlighting the table and use the disable option. All right, now what's important here is this message. It tells you that if you want to keep the audited information, okay, you need to specify yes, which means is that although you're disabling the audit on the table, it is going to provide or keep the details of the changes made, which were historic. Okay, if you want to clear those details, simply say no. The auditing will then be disabled and the records cleared on that table which you audited previously. So I can say, for example, yes, although I want to disable the auditing, I just want to keep records of the historical changes made when the auditing was in fact implemented. So if I go back to my configuration and audit setup, I go to client, it tells me that it has been disabled, okay, and it's kept the records there of my previous processes. Obviously, if I want to clear that, I can then say no on the previous error message and then disable the auditing as well as clear the historical information there. Right, so very useful tool, and very useful if you want to monitor transactions or activity on a certain SQL table. Right, then one of the really new features, or one of the very convenient features we've added on version 9 is the ability to process a backup and restore within the application. So previously, if you want to make a backup of your database or do a restore, you'd need to close the program, make sure no one was in the system, and from there go and connect to your SQL server, find the database and perform the backup or restore via Management Studio. Whereas now it's much easier, more convenient. Simply a case of going to Administration, System Tools, Database Administration, right? And I can simply here go specify either to backup or restore. So if I'm going to do backup, specify a backup folder and the backup file name. Now, one of the unique features here is that the system automatically creates a backup file name as a database name. And very useful is it's going to go add the date and timestamp of when the backup was made to the .back file name. So this is very useful, specifically, for example, if you've got many backup sets and you want to see the most recent one to restore, simply just check at the file name and you can see exactly the date and time when the backup was processed. Right, so it's a case of backing up there to my specific location, and then under the restore process, very simple. Go and browse for where the backup file is stored, and then from there, go and restore the database. Quick, easy, and simple. Right. Now, one of the options you may want to implement is using an internet link within Sage 200. So, for example, you may want to be able to open up an internet link within your database, which is really quite simple. And we can do that by creating an internet link to a specific website. So to do that, we need to log in as administrator. And we need to go to the system tree. So I'm going to log in as administrator there, go to my system configuration system wizard. And I'm going to go to the default system tree. Right, so here's our default system tree. I'm just going to find the internet link section, which is over there. And I'm now going to go and add a new internet link for my application. So +sign. And the file name that's used to run an internet link can be found in your program install directory. And it's called bpl exe.bpl. So find that file in your install folder, select it. Right, that's done. Next. Right, so now it tells me that I'm going to need to use the Transfer Navigator Base option. Select that. And next. And now I need to go specify a description. And now the command. Now, the command line is as follows: navigate, URL, and then the URL for that specific site. So, for example, right, so I'm now going to specify the actual URL to that specific website, and back one, finish, and finish. And we're just going to log out, log back in again, so that the system tree is refreshed with the new details. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to close that, and if I go to my internet links, right, our local website, there we go. It's not knowledge base website, that's the one we want. And there we go. Right, simple as that. So from within my own application, I can then go directly link up to a website. It could be instances like, for example, you want to maybe have your own website link there, etc. Check a couple of details. However, my recommendation is that you create an internet link to your Sage City portal, as well as our knowledge base, obviously for ease of access and use, where you can simply go and if you encounter any errors or any program information you require, simply use the internet links option and you have a direct link to the information. So very easy and very useful feature to make use of. Right, so within Sage Evolution, we've got the ability to view information in grids and master files, transactions, etc. Now, it could be a case that you've got multiple or large volume of transactions and you want to maybe use an on-screen filter. And the application really has a great way that you can sort of filter information to suit your requirements, specifically looking for a certain transaction, etc., or a certain record. And just take, for example, if I go to maybe inventory and I want to view certain details about my inventory items. So I'm going to go to maintenance there, and let's just go find our inventory items. So as you can see, there's a whole range of inventory items here. Now I just want to filter with some criteria, and what you'll notice is that there's a funnel option at the bottom, which allows me to filter the data. So I'm going to use that feature. And I can now go ahead and specify what filter I want to make use of. So let's just say we can add a new one. Let's just say, for example, we want to see which items have an available quantity above a certain value. So I'm going to go and look at quantity available. There we go, quantity available. And I can use certain criteria. For example, is greater than, and I'm going to say 25. Right, apply that, and we're good to go. So as you can see, it tells me what my filter criteria is. And I've got my details there because those particular records meet my filter criteria. Right, so we're good to go then. And remember is that what I could also do is I could maybe add multiple filters. So for example, if quantity is greater than this, but the cost price equals that, etc. So I can be quite creative with regards to the filters I set up, and then only go, for example, view those records that meet my filter requirements criteria. Right, quick, easy, and simple. And then to remove it, I simply go close the filter, and I've now got all my items appearing. Now, for example, under the customer side, just go to just make use of suppliers. Right, so I'm going to go to my suppliers, and what I've got is I've got a balance column there that I've added. And what I'm going to do is I want to, for example, if I have a whole range of suppliers, I just want to have a look at on the grid exactly which ones meet my certain criteria. So just say, for example, new filter. And just say, for example, balance. is greater than, let's just pick a number here. Right, apply that filter, and we're good to go. And now I can simply, if I need to, just export this information and go and review it in Excel, whichever medium I require. So as you can see, a great way in order for you to filter information, and you can be quite specific on those filter requirements. A good example would be maybe if you want to filter certain transactions. So you're looking for a certain amount or a certain transaction, you can use it very efficiently by going to inquiries and then from that using the filter option if you need to. Right, then we've got a feature which is very convenient, specifically if you're doing, for example, purchase orders and receiving goods via GRV. It's called the Confirm Maximum feature. So I'm going to just demonstrate this by going to by processing a purchase order. Right, there's my PO. And I've got the details there. I'm just going to add a couple of items there. Right, so I process my purchase order or place my order. Right, so now obviously at some point the goods would arrive from my supplier and I now need to book them into the system. So the norm would be simply go back to the PO, locate the document, the purchase order. Right, and there we go. So I'm going to pick up that. And it could be that you've got a whole range of lines on the actual item. You obviously check the quantities. And instead of going to each line, I can simply use the option that says confirm maximum. Okay, which just means is that update the quantity or confirmation line with the quantity being actually ordered. So I can use the order option, confirm maximum quantity, or I can use a shortcut key, which is Shift, Control, and M. So confirm maximum. There we go. Just confirm the quantity ordered, and I can then, if need be, process the supply invoice and GRV simultaneously, and we're good to go. So confirm maximum, go and process the transaction. Right, now when processing transactions, we've obviously specifically for things like invoices and purchase orders and supply invoices, we have set up the defaults and the specific modules. However, we are still able to make specific on-the-fly changes to the document itself. So, for example, if I go to my invoices and right, there we go. So I've opened up. Right, so we've obviously got the invoicing screen here. However, we have got the ability to make certain changes to that document on the fly. So, for example, you can change between inclusive and exclusive. Simply use the Control F5 key. You can change from text per line versus text per document. Control F6 is the shortcut key there. And under options, I can always just go and make changes. For example, enter prices inclusive versus exclusive. calculate tax per line per document. I can set a default quantity there, and I can make a couple of changes there. So as you can see, although I've set up my defaults within the relevant modules, I still can make changes here based on the specific document when processing that transaction. And under appearances, I've got the ability to show line notes in the grids if I need to, and also auto fit the grid columns based on the lines or the transactions being processed within that document. So as you can see, a couple of options that you could consider if you are processing, for example, a document that is not based on the defaults that you set up previously for that document within the relevant modules. Right, and then we've got the ability to things like filtering columns. So specifically for lookups, it's a very useful feature. So I'm just going to go and add some details here into an invoice. And very importantly, to do this, I can simply go right click on the item column, and you'll see that there's a lookup field. So firstly, a lookup is going to tell me exactly how the item is going to be displayed on the drop-down menu. However, I certainly am able to go customize that. So I'm just going to go to the customize option there. And I've got a whole range of fields available. And what I can do is I can simply go and modify that and switch my requirements. Let's just go, for example, to specify something over here we want to look at. Just say quantity on hand. So just tick that box, and I've got the up and down arrow keys to go move it to my specific position. Right, so for example, in this particular case, I can say I don't want those to appear there, which is fine. I simply want to display quantity on hand and then have the details there. So take off those ones. We don't need those to appear. So okay to that. And on my drop down now, I've got the ability to display quantity on hand, the stock link, etc. And I can go see exactly what the details are of that item from my drop-down menu. And then if need be, I can simply go and look up field. It tells me what the lookup currently is. And once again, go customize and make the changes there if I need to. Right, and there we go. So as you can see, you can, as a user, go customize your lookup fields, filter options, etc., and your document layouts. And once again, as in all screens, the ability to go and customize the grid columns and add or remove certain columns which may not be applicable to the transaction that you are going to be processing. So as you can see, there are a whole range of features here within the program which is going to make your processing more efficient, quick, and more streamlined, and obviously make use of them when processing transactions, running reports, etc. That's a wrap from me. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope this webinar was useful. It's over and out from me. Thank you and goodbye.